Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, brought to you by our friends over at Briar Greaves Insurance. Protecting your assets starts with a company that you can count on. So whether that's auto, homeowners, flood, boaters, or business insurance, there's nobody better in the business to work with than the great people over at Briar Greaves Insurance. For more information about them, visit their website, briargreavesinsurance.com, or you can give them a call at 813-876-4166. That is 813-876-4166. It is a Thursday edition of the Pewter Report podcast. We thank everybody that is rocking and rolling with us this afternoon for this show. We're going to talk about how the Bucs and Todd Bowles and Jason Light can win in 2026, because there's no doubt about it. Todd Bowles is on the hot seat, and some of this falls on Jason Light too. There's a lot of uncertainty with this team right now. They don't have an offensive coordinator. They don't have a special teams coordinator. They have some defensive assistant coaches to hire. But what we do know is that Todd Bowles is running the show at head coach, and Jason Light, of course, will be very important in building out this team going into the 2026 season. So we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that, the latest Bucs news, and of course, answering some questions, comments, and super chats from our very valued Pewter people. So let's get into it. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me is my colleague and fellow co-host of the Pewter Report podcast. It is Adam Slavon. Hello, Adam. What's going on, my man?
What's up, Matt? Great to be on the show on this Thursday. I'm just putting a link into the chat here. So the topic for today's show is how the Bucs can win with Todd Bowles in 2026. And many people might see that headline and be like, oh, they can't win with Todd Bowles. But the reality is, as you've pointed out, that he's going to be the man in charge this season. So most Pewter people want the team to win in 2026. We're going to break down how exactly they can do that. And as we're going to get into, it's a multi-layered, step-by-step process. The Bucs have to replace Thomas McGahee, Josh Grizzard. They have to revamp the defensive coaching staff. And then at the same time, they have to add talent. So there's a lot of variables that are going to go into Tampa Bay being a winning football team, but they still have the potential in the NFC South to do just that.
Yeah, the topic of this podcast episode was inspired by an article that you wrote recently and did a great job with. So it's almost like a blueprint for what Tampa Bay has to do this season. The question is whether or not we believe Todd Bowles can get it done, because the belief beforehand with Todd was, okay, he would win by one more game each season, but then dropped all the way down, going from 10 wins in 2024 to then just 8 wins in 2025. Question is, can he jump all the way back up, not just to 10 wins? I think it needs to be a 3 to 4 win improvement in 2026. The problem is, I don't know if Todd Bowles can get there, but he's going to have to work his way uphill, back up the mountain in order to get it done.
And to reach the summit of that mountain, the biggest part that we're going to talk about here today is the offensive coordinator. So there was all the talk of maybe it being Todd Monken. He met in person with the team on Wednesday, but with John Harbaugh going to the Big Apple to New York to coach the Giants, it's looking like Monken's going to head there with him. So now it becomes a question of, is it going to be Mike McDaniel? He's interviewing with the team on Friday. Maybe Nate Scheelhaus. He's getting a lot of looks from other teams about head coaching vacancies. There's 8 of them across the league. There's some high quality offensive coordinator jobs. What's going to happen?
Yeah, first, Adam, I want to get your thoughts on what Monken would have, like, if you had your choice of McDaniel or Monken, forget the fact that Monken's not available anymore. Who would have been your choice there? And then give me your thoughts as well on Mike McDaniel and the excitement and the possibility that he could become the Tampa Bay.
Between the two, I actually would have leaned toward Monken for this upcoming season, just based on the personnel that's in Tampa Bay. But at the same time, you also have to consider the long-term vision of the franchise. And I think if you're looking through that scope, you're going to lean toward McDaniel, because let's say Bowles is on the hot seat, you have somebody waiting in the wings. So the Glazers aren't going to make the same mistake twice, letting another Liam Cohen walk out the door. And I think that's where McDaniel comes in. He has a ton of experience across the NFL. He's been coaching, believe it or not, He looks like he's in his 30s. He's 42, but he's coached for
Mhm.
over 20 years. He's got influence from Mike Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan, Gary Kubiak, Matt LaFleur, Sean McVay. Like, he's seen all of that. He knows what it means to lead an offense. He did that in Miami. In 2023, they had the second best scoring offense. But when you look at Monken, it's a shame, right? Because I think he's that
Yeah.
kind of no nonsense, no BS. I'm not going to put up with anything. I'm just going to orchestrate masterful offensive game plans. And he did that in Baltimore for the Ravens. He turned Lamar Jackson into one of the best quarterbacks, not just running the football, but passing the football. He had 41 touchdowns to 4 interceptions in 2024. Derrick Henry, he revived his career in his early 30s. I think he would have been great in Tampa Bay. I think he's going to do wonders for Jackson Dart. But now it becomes Mike McDaniel. Is he going to be the guy that wants to come to Tampa Bay when the Lions offensive coordinator job's out there, the Ravens, the Chargers? I mean, like Jack Harlow said, he got options.
Absolutely. And the Eagles, too. I think it's another intriguing one as well. And I would have been fine with McDaniel or it wouldn't be but I would have been fine with Mike McDaniel or Todd Monken as the offensive coordinator. I think they're both very qualified for the job. And I'll give a little inside baseball for everybody as well. We had our point counterpoint come out today. Adam and I collabed on it, but originally it was Scott and I on it talking about would we rather have Todd Monken or Mike McDaniel, and I went with McDaniel, and Scott went with Monken. But then with all the news this morning about Monken reportedly going with John Harbaugh to the Giants, we felt it was better to scrap that story and then go in another direction, which Adam and I will talk about a little bit later on this show. But some of the points that I brought up is what you were talking about too, where Mike McDaniel, it's more than just what he did with the Miami Dolphins running their offense. And yes, it
Yeah.
didn't work out great, but I'd be willing to argue that the downturn of the 2024 season and 2025 season was the serious concussion situations with Tua, which missed a lot of time in 2024 and just did not look like the same guy in 2025. But it goes even before Miami, to your point, working alongside McVay and LaFleur and Shanahan. And then he followed Shanahan to Atlanta. And then he followed Shanahan to the 49ers. And yeah, maybe he wasn't calling every single play with Shanahan there. But this is a guy that took, and not just single handedly, but when he was with Atlanta, they got the Falcons to the Super Bowl. Matt Ryan won MVP, and obviously we all know how
Yeah.
it ended, 28-3. Tom Brady comes back, but still, their main figureheads was Matt Ryan, MVP, maybe borderline Hall of Famer, Julio Jones, and then their running backs, Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman. The 49ers, he helped get them to a Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo as their starting quarterback. This was in 2019. This is way before what we think of the 49ers now with Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey wasn't on that team. It was
No.
Jimmy Garoppolo. It was Deebo Samuel as a rookie. George Kittle was still there. Kyle Juszczyk was the starting fullback. And those were his weapons on that team. And then he goes to Miami and was an absolute juggernaut, especially his second year coaching
Yeah.
Miami in 2023 with it was Devon Achane's rookie season. Tyreek Hill was there. Jalen Waddle, a healthy Tua. That team, they had the 70-point outburst against the Denver Broncos. I believe it was early in the season. It's in September. They ended up the best offense in football. They were technically second in points per game at 29.2. The Cowboys were 29.9, I believe, or something like that. So they weren't that far off. And the Dolphins were first in yards. So pretty much, if you look at all the personnel that we just talked about, whether it was Julio or Tyreek or Kittle or Juszczyk, wherever the case may be, all different types of players and different types of personnel that Mike McDaniel assisted in getting the best out of them. So that doesn't concern me. Some people might say, oh, well, you had Tyreek Hill. No. He had other talented players, and some great, some average, but he got the best out of them. I have no doubt in my mind that if he comes to Tampa, Mike McDaniel would be able to do pretty much the exact same to a degree with Baker Mayfield, with Chris Godwin Jr., hopefully with Mike Evans. We can't guarantee that, but hopefully with Mike Evans, with Bucky Irving. And all the other receivers, Jalen McMillan, Emeka Buka.
Yep.
And we're also forgetting, too, if he becomes the offensive coordinator, maybe some people haven't forgotten, if he becomes the offensive coordinator, it's the first time in 5 years he's only focusing on the offense. Just think how much better that offense can be when he doesn't have to worry about the defense and in-game management and when to challenge and do all these things. That primary focus, he was part of that innovative group. I mean, he was the rat pack of this innovative offense with him and everybody else we mentioned, McVay, LaFleur, Shanahan. I think the Bucs could, I don't want to say easily because the NFL, nothing is easy, but the Bucs could, no doubt about it, get back up to 26 points a game, maybe get all the way up to 30 points per game if Mike McDaniel is the guy.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said there. And when with McDaniel, he's an offensive innovator. And you mentioned the point of, if he became an offensive coordinator, all he'd have to do is focus on coaching that side of the ball. And I think that's maybe one downside of a lot of the young offensive coaches is that their game management skills just aren't fully there yet. Matt LaFleur and the Packers, you mentioned Kyle Shanahan and what happened during the Super Bowl with the Falcons when he was calling plays. Just
yeah. Looks like maybe we lost Adam for a second. Yep, I think we lost Adam. Or maybe I'm freezing. I don't know. Yep, we lost him. Okay, Bruder says we lost him. All right, we'll pivot real quick, but I'm sure Adam was making some great points. We'll wait for a moment for him to come back. But in the meantime, we do have a couple of super chats to get to. So we will start it with. Actually, we had someone join us as a Pewter Report YouTube channel member, and that was Celine. Thank you so much for becoming a Pewter Report YouTube channel member. That was at 3:30, about half an hour before the show started. Really appreciate that. Thank you very, very much for all of your support. By the way, we're going to have a Pewter Insider coming up on Friday at 1:30. We'll talk about all the latest headlines with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, what's working and what's real, what's not real with this team. So that will be our Pewter Insider tomorrow at 1:30. Oh, trying to get that picture in. Next super chat, we shall go to Dubs078. Thank you for the $9.99 super chat. We appreciate it. Says, funny how Harbaugh turned down the Bucs and said he wanted his own general manager and then went to a team that already has a GM. The Bucs are a joke. We need new owners. Well, you're not going to get new owners. Owning a football team, one, it's tough to get into that crowd in the first place. But two, once you become an owner, like your team doesn't even have to be good. You can still make a ton of money as an owner in the NFL. So the Glazers aren't going anywhere, but I understand your frustration with it. What I will say is, like, we don't know all the details that came out with John Harbaugh. There were reports that he wants his own GM. Maybe John Harbaugh just didn't want to come to the Bucs. Like maybe he was infatuated with Jackson Dart. Maybe he doesn't believe in Baker Mayfield. We don't know the exact reason why John Harbaugh didn't want to go to Tampa Bay. Maybe he was just using the GM thing as an excuse, but he was also like friends with Jason Light going back to his time as with the Eagles when they were working together. So I don't know. I have a tough time thinking that John Harbaugh just doesn't like Jason Light. If the reports are true that he won his own GM and then was fine with Joe Shane, the Giants GM, I don't know. That part is a little bit odd to me, but I don't know. Those are just reports. I think Harbaugh probably has a different feeling about Tampa Bay than he does with the New York Giants. But that was some big time news as well, because that was a double whammy for the Bucs. It was like, one, well, they were never really going to be on the Harbaugh sweepstakes after the first couple of days, but one, a head coaching job fills up, but two, you lose Todd Monken as well because of it. So it was almost a double whammy with the news about John Harbaugh becoming the Giants head coach. Looks like we got Adam back. Adam, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I apologize about that. It's been a windy
No
day,
worries.
so I think the Wi-Fi went out for just a minute.
We're getting a cold front in Tampa. But that's all right. We got to one of our super chats. Let's get to our second super chat as well. Actually, we got a couple super chats. T Level, thank you for the $2 super chat. Says McDaniel stays in Florida to stay tax free. Yeah, he would be going from Miami to Tampa, staying in the Florida area. I mean, that's obviously a benefit, but I don't know if it's going to be the one singular thing that would keep him from being an offensive coordinator versus a head coach. Yeah. Let me ask you this, Adam, because I was having some other conversations about this. If you were to rank the top offensive coordinator positions, whether it's just based on personnel, how the team is, who the head coach is, your position to move up in the organization or set yourself up for another head coaching job, how would you rank it between Tampa Bay, Detroit, Philadelphia, and the LA Chargers?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it was actually something I was attempting to talk through before I cut out for a minute.
Oh, gotcha.
But when I look at Tampa Bay, I think it's one of the best available gigs out there because where would you rather be? Would you rather be the head coach of the Cleveland Browns or, stay in Florida, be the offensive coordinator working with all the weapons in Tampa Bay? I'd lean towards Tampa Bay being probably the second best. I would rank the Lions first, and then I would say Bucs second, Ravens third, Eagles fourth, or maybe swap the two, and then you have the Chargers too. I mean, there's 5 really good gigs out there, but I would say with the Bucs and all the offensive weapons and just the opportunity. I mean, it's a head coaching pipeline. Dave Canales in 2023, then you had Liam Cohen in 2024. I mean, if you do a good job and are not just average, but you're above average, you're going to find a gig sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I think I put the Bucs 3. I know there's some turmoil going on with the Eagles. But at the end of the day, we've seen this before with Philadelphia. They make the Super Bowl, then their coordinators get poached. Yeah. Then they have a down year. That was when the Bucs smoked them in the wild card round in Baker's first year. Then they regroup, get new coordinators, win the Super Bowl like they did a season ago. And then their coaches got poached once again. One of them, Kellen Moore, in the division, coaching the Saints. Yeah. Then they struggled again, lost in the first round. Now they fired their offensive coordinator, and they're looking for a better coordinator. I think the Eagles probably still have a little bit better. The quarterback situation is tough with Jalen Hurts, but if they're firing on all cylinders, I think they're probably tougher to beat than Tampa and maybe even Detroit too, just given Saquon and the offensive line. And when A.J. Brown is humming, the problem is if he's not, then he's super angry and frustrated. But I do think as well, Detroit and the Eagles give you a little bit more stability in terms of, maybe if you're running the show really well on the offensive side for the Bucs offense, if Todd Bowles isn't and he gets let go, you could come in and become the head coach after that. But how is your team looking in this moment? Is your defense just absolutely deflated? Is your offense good enough for you to go from coordinator to head coach? You would have to be the next Liam Cohen. You would have to be scoring 30 points per game. Where if you're with the Eagles and you're with, or the Detroit Lions, you're not going to be the head coach there. But if you're running a really good system over and over, you're not going to be one and done as a coordinator because Dan Campbell's not getting fired and Nick Sirianni's not getting fired. You can then, if you want, you can pick your spot if you want to. You don't have to leave and be a head coach after one season. We saw Ben Johnson do that. Everyone thought Ben Johnson was leaving 2 seasons ago. Then he came back, and then now he's with the Bears, and now he's going to the second round of the postseason in his first year as head coach. To me, I think that's a little bit more appealing of, hey, I got a good spot right here. I can coach well, and then decide when I want to be the head guy somewhere else. So I think that's why I'd have the Bucs 3 with Detroit and Philadelphia a little bit higher up.
Yeah, that makes sense. I would say, like, you talking about that, it's kind of like the analogy of, would you rather be a rookie quarterback coming in and starting right away, or would you rather
Yeah.
sit behind an experienced guy, wait a couple of years, and then have your choice of finding the perfect spot? Like Ben Johnson, he could have gone to the Atlanta Falcons. There was the Washington Commanders. Like, so many teams wanted him, but he's like, I'm going to wait. I'm going to find the right gig, and then I'm going to take control. So, it's a slope that you can go down, and you could either go about it one or two ways.
Chris Cole says Shieldhouse, please. I think he's a very intriguing target as well, but to me, I think he's the guy that's going to end up taking one of those head coaching jobs. There's just way too many of them out there. Like, yeah, he still needs to prove himself as a
Yep.
as a play caller, but why not just do that as a head coach than an offensive coordinator? I'm not saying it's the exact same thing as Canales, but it would be the same thing of like, hey, I'm taking a major leap, but I'm getting that opportunity for the major leap. But yeah, Shieldhouse, I think, I don't know. Here's my problem with not necessarily Nate Shieldhouse, but the thought process of that Nate Shieldhouse is going to be, the grand savior for the Bucs because hey, he's a young guy, he's a bright mind, he comes from Sean McVay, and he does all this great stuff and blah blah blah, yada yada yada. The only difference he has over Josh Grizzard was that he called plays at Iowa State for one season. Outside of that, he's pretty much got the same resume that Josh Grizzard does. Hey, he worked under Mike McDaniel. Hey, he worked under Liam Cohen. He's a smart guy. He went to Yale. He knows everything. He's been around the league. There's not this guarantee that Nate Shieldhouse is going to light it up. For every Liam Cohen, there is a Dave Canales and Josh Grizzard. And maybe Liam Cohen ruined it for everybody else, but that's part of like why I really would have liked Monken or really do like Mike McDaniel is that everyone just thinks everyone's going to be the next Liam Cohen, and that's not the
Right.
case a lot of the times. We saw the growing pains with Josh Grizzard. There's nothing that says that Nate Shieldhouse won't have that same kind of bumps in the road as well.
Yeah, especially early on in the year. I mean, you saw in 2023, like the Bucks offense, they struggled at the beginning of the season before they really turned it on late. It, arguably be the same thing with Shieldhouse, but I like him. I rewatched the video Jeremy Fowler had. I think ESPN posted it. And Shieldhouse's process of like drawing up plays, being that guy for Sean McVay. It's something, there was like a pipeline. Everybody did it.
Mm-hmm.
Zach Taylor, Zach Robinson, all across the league. Shieldhouse is a really smart, really intelligent guy, but at the same time, so is Josh Grizzard. He went to Yale. He was that next up and coming person in their mid 30s. I think Shieldhouse is 34, 35. It's a risk, I think, with Shieldhouse as opposed to Mike McDaniel or even, arguably Zach Robinson, somebody who's called plays at the NFL level. Like, it's either Todd Bowles, he's going to try to hit a home run, or he's going to strike out. And he struck out with Josh Grizzard last year, but he hit a home run with Liam Cohen. So that's something to weigh. But I think with so many head coaching vacancies, Matt, all across the league, somebody's going to take a chance on Shieldhouse and just bump him up from passing game coordinator all the way to head coach.
Fitting that you use a baseball analogy with Todd Bowles when his Wikipedia profile is him in a Yankees jersey throwing out a
Yes.
picture at, I believe, a Yankee spring training game. Moving on with these super chats, let's go to 02RR. Thank you for the $1.99 super chat. Says, do not let Mike McDaniel leave Tampa on Friday. I would love if that's the case for Tampa Bay, but you got to put yourself in the shoes of Mike McDaniel. You're not going to agree to anything from the Bucs until one, you see what other head coaching vacancies are still around, and two, I know he's meeting or met with Detroit. Talk to some of the other offensive coordinator situations as well. You can't just base this off of, oh, well, I love living in Florida and, Tampa's a great city. All that stuff is true. No doubt about it. But he's got to look at career advancement too. I think at the end of the day, McDaniel wants to be a head coach once again. Now, the question does become how much are the Bucs willing to pay to keep
Right.
Mike McDaniel? Because that could be something that does keep him around.
Yeah, and money talked last year with Liam Cohen when the Bucs offered him a chance to be the highest paid offensive coordinator in the NFL, I believe making around $4 million a year. He got that deal from Jacksonville making 12 to 13 million a year. So if a team went out and offered McDaniel at least 10 million, as opposed to maybe making 3 to 4 in Tampa Bay, he might lean that way. And then also the opportunity, once again, as you said, to become that head coach.
No doubt about it. One other super chat to get to at the moment, and it does also coincide with our conversation about Mike McDaniel. Actually, we have two other super chats. So SRQ Salt, thank you for this 4.99 super chat. Says, if McDaniel truly wants the job, will Glazers pony up the $4 million per year he'll want? Rondé indicated money was a partial reason why they kept Todd Bowles. I think they would be willing to pay the money because they were going to do the same with Liam Cohen, as you just mentioned. Now, the thing with the extension to Todd, you kind of see it around the league. Like, yes, it's easy to just say, "Oh, just eat the money," but at the end of the day, like the Glazers are running a business, and they can't just spend money willy nilly. I think in other situations, yeah, maybe they do just fire Bowles, but it's clearly money has to do with some of it, but it doesn't mean that they won't be willing to spend it in other areas. And you see it with other teams too. Like there would have been a case to be made that Aaron Glenn of the Jets would have been fired after one season with how bad it went and just being non-competitive in games, but they signed him to I think it's like a 4-year, $40 million deal. So they don't want to eat $30 million after just having a coach for one season. So it does play a factor into probably why Todd is here, but I don't think it rules out them spending a good amount of dough on Mike McDaniel, given his history and given what they did with Liam Cohen as well.
Exactly. And I think they would even maybe up the ante beyond 4 million, because when you think about it, getting McDaniel would be an A+ hire by the Bucs, because for all the talk about him maybe getting a head coaching job, if you landed him as an offensive coordinator, like that is huge. He'd immediately become one of, if not the best offensive coordinator in football, like that has that position. That's not a head coach, calling plays. Like just his experience and his background and just the ability with what he did with the Dolphins, it ended sour, but the potential is there, Matt, as you mentioned, for this offense to get back to averaging at least 27 points a game with McDaniel.
Yo, yeah, of course. Like this Bucks offense, it's not that far off the train tracks. I just think Baker Mayfield needs a couple of simple tweaks. The running game needs a couple of simple tweaks. Same with getting guys open at wide receiver, but they're not far away from being what they were in 2024 and some flashes in 2025 as well. And one of the big reasons why I like McDaniel too is that his offense with Miami, it was all about rhythm, timing, maybe not necessarily quick throws, but see like who's your main go-to target on that play and hit it early, scheming guys open, a lot of motion as well. These were all the same things that Baker Mayfield was doing in Liam Cohen's offense when he threw for 4,500 yards and threw for 41 touchdown passes. It's not exactly identical, but it's the same idea. It's the same concept of quick throws, get the ball to your best players, don't hold on to the ball for too long, rely on your running game. These are all the same concepts and notions from Liam Cohen to Mike McDaniel or vice versa, however you want to look at it. And that's why it's super important to have him in here as well for the development of Baker Mayfield, because the Bucs are going to have a big discussion and conversation this offseason about what to do with Baker. Do you sign him to an extension right now? How much would that extension cost? And then at the same time, do you decide, okay, we're going to let him play out the final season, which is a weird spot because you want to be successful and you want to win, but you don't want him to be too good because you don't want to pay him $60 million per year when you could have got him for 40 to 45 million. So it's I don't know, it's a bit of a conundrum with this whole situation for Tampa Bay, but one they were kind of in a couple of years ago too.
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned like how the offense could come back together and reach its 2024 levels. I'd argue, like, simply based on the fact of better health from Mayfield, all the wide receivers, the offensive line, like if they aren't as battered as they were last year, like simply based on that, they're going to be better. And then you add in somebody like McDaniel calling plays, like the sky's the limit to reach 2024 or, heck, maybe past 2024. And McDaniel, he already has done that. He has a track record. So it makes it really intriguing.
Another super chat from T Level. Thank you for the $5 super
Thank
chat.
you.
Says question 4, and this one's specifically to
Ooh,
Adam. Says Sly, way too early record predictions and Bowles termination date, or defensive coordinator ideas if it happens midseason.
that's a great question. Thank you for the super chat. For the way too early record predictions, I would say for the Bucs this coming season, I'd have them right now at 9-8. It depends a lot on what happens in free agency and the draft, but I think they're right in the middle. They're not quite 8 wins. They're not quite 10 wins. Bowles' termination date, I would say the end of next season. If things don't get better, if there's not serious playoff advancement, I think he gets the boot. Defensive coordinator ideas midseason probably would be Larry Foote. I'm really interested, and we could talk more about the defensive coaching staff. There's a
Yeah.
coach out there that I'm really interested in, Denard Wilson. He was a
Okay.
coach with the Jets back when Bowles was a head coach, and he was with the Eagles in 2022, working with Darius Slay, James Bradbury. I think he's a really good defensive mind, somebody they could bring in as a cornerbacks coach, and maybe he gets that role.
A guy I mentioned him before, but someone I would love to be on Tampa Bay's roster would really, or coaching staff, it would really shake things up a lot. But it's an attention grabber, and I think it's a motivator for people. Would be Warren Sapp as the D line
Yeah,
coach. He would come into some OTAs and coach the guys. I know he's the D line coach of Colorado, and some people didn't love how Colorado looked on the defensive side and their defensive line. But I think there's a difference between coaching up college kids and coaching up NFL players when, Warren Sapp was at the height of his powers, in the NFL with the Bucs. And I think he's done a good job at scouting talent as well. He's not afraid to call guys out. I mean, he's calling out Larry Foote on social media, being like, why is he an outside linebackers coach? He was an inside linebackers coach, when it came to, coaching the Bucs last season. So I think Warren Sapp, like, you would never have to worry about guys getting up for games because Warren Sapp's going to be the first dude to get in your face and say, we got to pick it up. We got to do this better, and et cetera, et cetera. So I would definitely love Warren Sapp as the D line coach. I also just wonder why, like, there was so much change on the defensive coaching staff this year. Dick Rapone retired. Kevin Ross is out. Charlie Strong out as well. Why are they gone? But then George Edwards is around, and Larry Foote is around, and Mike Caldwell is around. Like, is it really just Todd went to the Glazers and was willing to see how few players he could, or coaches he could let go before the Glazers go, okay, that's fine. Like, you can keep with the rest of the guys. I don't know. To me, it feels like almost a weird half measure type
yeah.
of move.
It's like if you ever watch Price is Right and you see the yodeling guy and it's like, how high can he go
Yeah.
before he falls off? It's like, okay, I'll let Kevin Ross go. All right. Nick Rapone, Charlie Strong, you're getting there. All right, that's enough. But there's still so many other coaches that should have been let go. I'd argue, Larry Foote maybe keeping him around, reducing his role. But Mike Caldwell, George Edwards, they probably should have got booted out too. And Warren
Yeah.
Sapp, you mentioned him, not just his background for being a Bucs player, a Hall of Famer, but his energy, his attitude. That's
Yes.
something that the defense needs, because you watch Raise the Flags, and there were red flags with Warren Sapp coming to Tampa Bay in 1995, right? I believe.
Yeah.
He was like, maybe we'll draft him, maybe we won't. But they drafted him, and they got the hell of a football player. And then you look at the past draft with James Pierce Jr. They were like, there's maybe some character concerns there. We won't take him. The Falcons did, and he led all rookies in the NFL in sacks. You need those kind of players if you're going to elevate this defense to the next level. In 2020, they did that. They had Ndamukong Suh, Jason Pierre-Paul. A 37-year-old Jason Pierre-Paul ain't going to do squat, and that was
Yeah.
their desperate move trying to save the year in 2025. But they need to add energy. And I think you do that with guys like Warren Sapp, but you also do that with young coaches that can relate to the players. You don't hire one 65-year-old coach to replace another 65-year-old head coach or defensive coach. That just doesn't
Yeah,
work.
I got you. No, it doesn't. And it would be going back to the well again if they brought in older coaches. You need a young influx of change and inspiration. Scott always refers back to, like, when Monty Kiffin brought in Mike Tomlin, and all the great stuff Mike Tomlin did as a defensive backs coach with this team. I mean, he helped Rondé Barber get into the Hall of Fame. You could see him putting on Rondé's gold jacket right there. And Rondé talked a lot about how important and influential Mike Tomlin is and was to his career. I mean, we could be the same thing about Benjamin Morrison, and even Zion McCollum has been in the league for a little bit. Jacob Parrish, Tyke Smith's only going into year 3. Like, it's not like he's going to stop developing. Even Antoine Winfield Jr. So Bowles needs to make sure he gets these hires right, whether it's OC, special teams coordinator, or some of the defensive assistants. I just don't know if he's going to push the right buttons because that's been, I don't know. We haven't really seen him search for too many guys on the defensive side,
No.
really. Like he brought in George Edwards, he brought in Mike Caldwell, but he already knew Mike Caldwell, and Caldwell was only available because he got let go as the defensive coordinator of the Jaguars. There hasn't been like a crazy new addition besides like Charlie Strong on the D line, and that was because Casey Rogers went to the Lions. I don't think it was because he was letting go of Casey Rogers. So Ball, for everything he knows about defense, he hasn't really brought in too many defensive guys here in Tampa Bay, but he's going to be forced to this year.
Yeah, and when you look at like the offensive coaching staff on the flip side, they got a complete overhaul since Bruce Arians retired. Like they brought in a whole
Yeah.
new slate of offensive coaches and they got so much better on that side of the ball than where they were in 2022. You can't say that for the defensive coaching staff. And you look at even Charlie Strong, the defensive line regressed. The run game got worse last season. Like there isn't a defensive coach that they've brought in that's really made things better under Bowles' tenure. I would say probably the best one is Rashad Johnson, the guy who's worked with the Nickelbacks over the past few years. But other than
Right.
that, Jason Light really has to push him to hire younger coaches. And I mentioned Denard Wilson in 2001 when Monty Kiffin hired Joe Barry to be the linebackers coach. There's another defensive quality control assistant out there with the 49ers, KJ Wright. Maybe they bring him in as a former linebacker to coach him up. Like they need something. They need to try something new because Bowles needs to learn new tricks. He's not long for the NFL. He's not going to be a head
Yeah.
coach much longer. But if he's making a last stand as really the only defensive coach in the NFL in his 60s, he needs to bring in some youth. Otherwise, this is going to be a dumpster fire and a sinking ship.
There's a lot of pressure on him this year to make sure he gets things right. The same way that I want to get my picks right over on Splash Sports with all the playoff games coming up this weekend, the divisional round. You could join over 2.5 million people playing on Splash Sports. It's the home for Survivor, Pick'em, and Quick Picks. They have it for other leagues as well. It's not just the NFL. I know the season's almost done. They have different leagues and tournaments and pools in all the major sports as well. So whether you want to create your own contests with friends or take a shot at life-changing prize pools, Splash Sports has got you covered. Find the best multipliers and profit boost in daily fantasy sports for the NFL divisional rounds coming up this weekend. Some awesome games to decide who's going to the AFC and NFC championship games. They got a big golf tournament coming up as well with a pool that's over $1 million they've been promoting. So definitely check out Splash Sports for that. And you can turn $20 into $1,000 by downloading the Splash Sports app today and winning on those quick picks. You can download the app by using the QR code on the screen. So shout out to Splash Sports. A couple other super chats to get to. Kings are awful. Could have expected this one coming. Thank you for the $2 super chat.
Thank
Says, how can Bowles win? Resign or stop calling the defense. Yeah, what do you think about all these reports that Bowles is going to continue calling plays versus maybe having another voice in there to operate how the Bucs defense goes about?
I mean, I think Rachaad White is right. As much as he's going to leave Tampa Bay in free agency, I think Bowles should stop calling plays. But it's an ego thing. It's the fact that, he was a defensive coordinator when they won the Super Bowl. He has all that working in his favor, so he's not going to stop calling plays. But I think it would be more beneficial to have a new voice on the defense. And for Bowles, he has that reputation of being a culture guy, building up the locker room. Just focus on that. Just focus on bringing up a offensive coordinator, whoever they decide to hire, lending some input, but giving it over to somebody who, could get more out of the defense. Because you look across the league, you look at the teams in the playoffs, they're either led by young defensive minds or like I look at the 49ers so much. What Robert Saleh is doing with that defense when they're so battered, they're dealing with so many injuries. Like, there's no excuse for the Bucs defense to be as bad as they are.
I completely agree. I mean, we see other teams out there, they don't just give up because their best player isn't available. And it feels like not that Todd's giving up, but he's saying, oh, well, I don't have my top edge rusher. I don't have my top corner. I don't know how we're going to get it done. Where it should be, hey,
Miscommunication.
we got these guys in. This is how we're going to win today, or this is how we're going to cause a turnover in this game. And Todd just never went about it that way. We spoke about it a little bit on yesterday's show, but you mentioned Rachaad White. What were your thoughts about his podcast or his appearance on the Loose Cannons podcast, and specifically what he had to say about Todd and running the team?
Yeah, so I caught his comments on Todd, running the defense. And I think overall, like Rachaad, he's just taking the time, to send some parting shots to the Bucs, because I don't think he's coming back. I don't think he would have said all that if he was re-signing. But I think he's also keeping it real. Like fans, I think he talked about, selling their seats and kind of lessening the home crowd support during the year. That's a major concern that I think it was the first time anybody's gone on record and really talked about it. So, Rachaad White, I think he's always been transparent. He's been transparent about his plans in free agency, but overall, I think things need to be said.
Yeah, pretty much my takeaway was, one, he could let it fly because he's not going to be back on the team. But two, he's saying things out loud that a lot of us are thinking, and I'm sure a lot of his teammates are thinking as well. So good on Rachaad White. I'd rather have players speak their mind and say how they feel and not get ridiculed from it, like publicly by national media, local media, fans and stuff like that. Because I'd rather athletes we talk to and players we talk to be open and honest and not be afraid to either call someone out or just say how they feel versus, the same cliche answers over and over again, because they know how, it's not us specifically, but there's other media that will stir things up and take things out of context and create controversy when there's not controversy to be made. So kudos to Rachaad White.
Yeah, there hasn't been as much controversy in Tampa Bay, but I think after the season, you're starting to see a little more openness, I think, about some of the issues. Like Yaya Diaby spoke about the walkthrough practices and talking about he feels like the only guy sometimes, getting after the quarterback. I mean, if you're trying to improve, you also need to keep it real. You need to keep it realistic, and that there are issues with this defense. And whether Bowles is calling plays or not, they need to be addressed.
That they do. We have a $20 super chat from user-NN2NU4WH4G. Thank you.
Thank you
so much for this $20 super chat, NN, who says, if McDaniel goes to the Lions, Eagles, or Chargers, there is a head coach not on the hot seat, barring a crazy collapse, an established culture to learn from, and access to a successful coaching tree/network. He gets none of this with the Bucs. That's a very interesting take. Now, McDaniel does have head coaching experience. We're always trying to learn. I don't think you stop learning just because you were a head coach. But yeah, I mean, that's a really, really good point and a fascinating one, because Dan Campbell, he's been to an NFC Championship game. He's won divisions, won 14 games. Nick Sirianni has won a Super Bowl. Jim Harbaugh he's been to a Super Bowl with the 49ers, won a national championship with Michigan. Now, Todd Bowles has been in the league for a while. He did win a Super Bowl with the Bucs as a defensive coordinator. I believe won one with the Packers. He was in the front office and won one as a player as well. So, Bowles has experience, but it certainly within the last 5 years of what coaches would you want to learn from and learn under, it's definitely the Lions, Eagles, and Chargers over Tampa Bay, despite even the success that the Bucs have had.
Yeah, you make a great point. The only part of this is the Eagles culture. I don't know if it's the best, just for the reasons that we outlined right now with Nick Sirianni. When things are going good, they're great. When they're not going good, there's a lot of shots there. But with Dan Campbell and the Lions, him and Brad Holmes, they completely rebuilt the organization from, the bottom up. They're running a great program. The Chargers with Jim Harbaugh, there's a lot of hope now with him leading the way, because Brandon Staley, he just was horrible in terms of the locker room, the chemistry there. But with the Bucs, it's arguable whether Bowles is really a good stepping stone for any offensive coordinator, to really like learn the ins and outs. Because with Dave Canales, I mean, he learned quite a bit, but he was never a play caller. Like this was his first substantial role. And I'd argue Liam Cohen, he would have been successful anywhere, but how much maybe was he held back from Bowles in 2024? Because for as much as he did on the offense, they only won 10 games that year.
Yeah, but I wonder if there wasn't Liam Cohen, how many more games did they lose? Like
Exactly.
Liam Cohen
Yeah,
was saving Todd
he
Bowles in
was.
several different ways. We also got to give a huge thank you to all of our Pewter Platinum members. So shout out to Scott Federico, Scotty J, Raythel Gordon, Noah Parr, Dave Anderson, Eric McMillan, Hezo813, Ash Fishpool, Joel Elrican, Sam, John Dale Morris, Zach Brannigan, RP89, Kevin Thomas, Mario Thomas, Leighton Carter, Brandon Riley, The Guy is Gifted, Alec Bickler, Nick Dubuque, Dominic Tarantino, HK Bucks, The Real Maverick, Brayon Pinkney, Brian Shucker, Black Gold, 1999, Steven Zool, King James, 813, Fear the Crew, Henry, Gigante, Robert Mackin, Todd Pittner, Giles Dowden, Monster Jam Fever, PC Snowflake, Hemp Tim, The Sea Snuffer, Bill Devers, King James, Frunzy No Buck 89, T Level, and Kevin Morrison. Thank you to each and every one of you for being super valued Pewter Platinum members. We could not do this show and Pewter Report TV without you. We're also going to have a Pewter Insider coming up tomorrow at 1:30, our bonus show for Pewter Platinum and Premier members. The headline is Bucs making plenty of headlines. That's going to be the topic because there's been tons and tons of news about the Bucs, whether it's been Rashad White, talking about Todd Bowles, the whole Mike McDaniel stuff, Todd Monken. So we'll kind of recap a little bit of everything that's gone on this week, maybe what we want to see from Tampa Bay in terms of coaching aspirations, maybe other interviews they haven't done yet that we would like them to at least conduct an interview with. And of course, the main reason why we're there is to answer any questions and comments that you may have on the Pewter Insider. So that'll be up tomorrow at 1:30. We do have a couple more super chats to get to. Thank you so much, everybody, for
Thank you.
these super chats and for joining us this afternoon. A lot of good conversation in different areas. I know everyone wants to talk about Mike McDaniel, I understand it, but we've had some good conversation in several areas. But this one, Kings Are Awful. Thanks for the $2 super chat. Says, in my opinion, McDaniel to Philly, it's 2023 all over again. Yeah, I get that because, yeah, when it's bad, it's bad. But like even the Eagles' bad is like the best that the Bucs have had under Todd Bowles. And I know the Bucs beat the Eagles a couple of seasons ago, but if that's as bad as it can get for the Eagles, when it is great, and they're going to have tougher competition this year. I mean, a healthy Jaden Daniels, a Cowboys with a revamped defense, and now Harbaugh with the Giants. The NFC East is going to be a ton of fun to watch this year in the NFL. So, yeah, we'll see how the Eagles counter as well if they can get a little bit of a better offense. But, yeah, I don't know. It's tough to decipher what Mike McDaniel truly wants if he is going to be an offensive coordinator. Like, does he just want to be comfortable? Does he want a specific type of quarterback? Not saying the anti-Tua, but, just a different caliber. What type of receivers or running backs does he prefer versus this is what I have? I don't know. There's a lot of variables when it comes to it.
And I think the Eagles, for him, it would be a lot of fun because I would argue like McDaniel really has a grasp of the run game more than the passing game when it comes to like running on the perimeter. Like you saw when the Bucs played the Dolphins, Devon Achane and Jalen Wright, they ran all over the Bucs, and he does that a lot. I think he utilized Achane properly. How is he going to use Saquon Barkley? Jalen Hurts is one of the best running dual threat quarterbacks in the NFL. And then you throw in two really good wide receivers in an established culture, an established winner. He might prefer that over Tampa Bay, but at the same time, does he want that opportunity to where, he could be that next head coach? If he sees the offensive coordinator position as a platform to get a job, he might take that.
D-Buck 757, thank you for this $10 super chat, says Bowles never made adjustments. he needs to put his pride to the side and bring in another defensive coordinator. The team is not on board with his defensive play calling. That's part of the battle is, he would try making adjustments. They just weren't the right adjustments. And when you lose the same way every single time, that wears on a team. Like losing 4 in a row, losing 7 of 8, winning and then not making the playoffs, like that weighs down on a team. And Bowles, for all the previous times of being able to reroute the ship and get back on course, just was not even close to rerouting it this time around last season.
And you could argue, like, even if he does make all the changes that you want to see, being that he's still the guy leading the way, how much hope do you have for the next season? Like, he had one eureka moment last offseason. He's going to need a few of them. He's going to have to fix so many of the just overall schematic issues, whether it's coverage, the pass rush, because all the talent's there, Matt. I think that they could have been such a better defense than they were last year because the secondary,
Yeah.
all the pieces like Antoine Winfield Jr. and Tyke Smith should be one of the best safety duos in football. Zion McCollum should have taken that next step as a really top tier corner, but you saw none of that happening. And there's just the development has stagnated. And Bowles has to do so much in 1 year. Like, can he do it all? Can he put all the pieces together? You haven't seen it yet.
No, you haven't. Love this comment from Rick, who says, Jason better have a Gucci stipend for Mike McDaniel.
The
Yeah,
glasses.
he is he's quite flashy with his outfits, his sunglasses, and his cars as well. I think he's got a pretty dope car too. Another super chat from Kings Are Awful. I think a fair point on this one.
Yeah.
Thanks for the $1.99. Says, who wants to go to a team where the defensive coordinator, or in this case, head coach as well, hijacks the offensive coordinator? Of course, pointing out when Todd Bowles mandated that there must be 30 rushing attempts against the Carolina Panthers in Carolina. It's a fair point. Like, what if Bowles panics again, freaks out, and decides, hey, we got to control the game my way, and does kind of, take over the plans of what other people want to do?
See, I think early on in the year, Bowles was patient and like he was willing to try new things in terms of game management, letting Josh Grizzard have more of a say. But we mentioned on a previous show when the losing streak like started, Zach Beistein, he stopped listening to him. And then when the offense started struggling, he started giving demands to Grizzard. And I don't think he didn't do that at all with Liam Cohen. Like he trusted Liam Cohen. The offense was rolling. He didn't say a word. But as struggles start to mount up, I think the patience of Todd Bowles starts to wear off. And then he'll have like his outburst after one of the games where he was just saying the F word. Like, I think he reaches a point where it just kind of boils and he just has to take control. And I don't think that's the solution either.
We got one other thing to talk about, but first, let's hear a message from our friends over at Jorgensen Law.
Welcome to Jorgensen Law PA, where our family's legacy drives us to fight for your rights. Specializing in personal injury, workers' compensation, and Social Security, we're committed to winning for you. No fees unless we succeed. Trust in our family to help yours. Let's achieve justice together.
That's right, Jorgensen Law PA. They are the champions of the injured and the disabled. You can give them a call at 727-347-7733. That's 727-347-7733. Their offices are based out of St. Petersburg. You can get a free case evaluation if you meet up with Jorgensen Law, and they will take no fees until they win your case. So there is no better deal to get with than the great people over at Jorgensen Law. They're the official law firm of Pewter Report and the Pewter Report podcast. You saw them on every single injury report and injury-related article that we had on Pewter Report during the season, and you can see them on our podcast as well. So the champions of the injured and disabled is Jorgensen Law PA. A couple of special teams news as well, Adam. They met with 2 different coordinators today. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who they met with Anthony Levine Jr.?
Yeah, Anthony Levine is a really interesting, I think of all the candidates they've met with 4 so far, he's the most intriguing because he was with the Ravens as the assistant special teams coach was his last stop. He played a decade with the Ravens, and he was a special teams ace. He had 62 coverage tackles. He held that fort down. He appeared in 146 games, And, learning under John Harbaugh, who has a background in special teams, this past year, they ranked top 10 really across the board in a lot of key categories. They had a really good punting game. They were top 10 in kickoff coverage. And all those marks would have been, so much better, a significant upgrade to what happened with the Bucs this past season. So I think between his playing background and then also being a rising coach, he's only 38 years old. The Bucs understandably have him on their radar. And then the other person that they spoke with was Michael Clay, and he's been the special teams coordinator with the Eagles over the past 5 years. In 2023, they ranked top 10 in 10 different categories on special teams. And he has a decade of coaching experience despite just being 34 years old. He was a linebacker at Oregon, played a little bit on the Dolphins. So he kind of has that toughness, but also a lot of experience. So I think right now, with what Tampa Bay is doing, the special teams coordinator position is really exciting because, special teams was awful last year, but they're targeting guys that are young. They're young, and then they also have experience. So I really like both of them. I would say the most out of the 4 guys they met with.
Yeah, Anthony Levine Sr., my apologies. But yeah, Anthony Levine, coming from John Harbaugh, let's remember, Harbaugh was a special teams guy. That's what helped him get his head coaching job. And then Michael Clay with the Eagles knows the role, being a special teams coordinator, and his unit blocked a punt and returned it for a touchdown against Tampa Bay. So, yeah, maybe to get a better special teams job, just play against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That seems to be how it goes for this team, for better or for worse. Let's get to this comment from King Cook, who says, it's Light's philosophy when it comes to free agency and the draft. That has to change. Adam, your thoughts?
Yes, so this was the last part of my story of the same title of this podcast today, is that Jason Light really needs to support Todd Bowles too, because we can, point to Todd Bowles and all his flaws, but the defense needs to get better talent-wise too. And I think they really need to get after some really exciting, tough football players. They need dogs on defense, and that might mean trading for Max Crosby, but I think they really have to draft somebody, if they elect to, at number 15 on the defensive side of the football. Sonny Styles from Ohio State, he comes to mind as a linebacker that can hold it down for a decade. But they need to add players in free agency. They need to call up different teams on the trade market, and they really need to get after it in the draft. And I know they have the best player available philosophy, and that's worked. That's yielded some really talented football players. But I think now you shift the focus more than ever on the defensive side of the football, because the offense, it's pretty much set in stone. You have the 5 offensive linemen, you have all the wide receivers, the running backs, maybe you draft one, but the defense, they need to focus on it. Jason Light really has to get after it because, if they want to support Todd Bowles, if they want to see his vision through and give him all the tools to success, he has to do his job too.
Yeah, they need Jason Light to be aggressive this year, whether it's making a trade. We've talked about Max Crosby, or maybe spending a little bit more money in free agency that he has. Actually go for a big ticket item on the defensive side to clean up a lot of the issues on your team, whether that's an edge rusher, whether that's an inside linebacker. And for sure, offensively, they can upgrade over K-Dot, and I'd be fine with that.
Yeah.
But anything else, you're going to probably need another running back with Rachaad White out. And probably it would be best to have just a backup interior offensive lineman waiting in the wings. But yeah, outside of that, a lot of attention should be on defense. They need Jason Light to be aggressive, not be afraid to go after proven commodities, and not be afraid to give up a couple of draft picks. Obviously, don't trade 3 first-round picks for an 8 player or something like that. But don't be afraid to wheel and deal a little bit, because you haven't as much in the past, and it's been fine. But clearly, just relying on only the draft and growth and development when you're not getting development from the coaches,
exactly,
it's not a recipe that's gonna continue to sustain your success. You've had sustained success going back to 2020, but you can't just kind of keep doing that same type of thing over and over. Because the league's changing a little bit, and Jason Light needs to adjust with it. Doesn't need to do a complete overhaul, just a couple of different tweaks here and there, and the Bucs can get back to competing for a division championship and hopefully a Super Bowl title as well.
And that's not to say that they haven't built up the team in a great way since 2022, because a lot of teams in that situation, they would have been hamstrung. They would have, kept rolling with aging veterans, like looking at the Saints, for example. They keep trotting out these old guys. No, the Bucs retooled. They became one of the youngest teams in the NFL. They relied on the draft to really find a lot of homegrown talent. They're one of the best at doing that. But you have to support that talent with other pieces. Like 2019 to 2020, they not only had Tom Brady, but they added other pieces around him. They added free
Yeah.
agents. And I think that's huge because you want to build a young nucleus, but have that supported by a veteran core. You need to add a couple more guys, sprinkle them in there. And you look at the free agent market this year, there's a lot of talent. Outside linebacker, it's led by Trey Hendrickson, but there's a lot of guys in their mid-20s that can make an impact. Inside linebacker, Devin Lloyd, Nakobe Dean. Cornerback, they have to replace Jamel Dean if he doesn't come back. I mean, they have to make moves and not just rely on the draft, because it's so much more than drafting. You have to evaluate other external additions that can set the culture. Like Hardy Nickerson. If they found another Hardy Nickerson out there, that would be a game changer.
Yeah, no more bargain deals for the Bucs. Go for the
Yeah.
high-priced items. Go for the value buys, or I guess not in that case. No more bargains. Go for the big ticket items. That's what Tampa Bay should be doing this offseason when free agency and the draft comes about. We are going to have a Pewter Insider coming up tomorrow, Friday at 1:30, talking about all the headlines the Bucs have been making lately. That is a bonus show for our Pewter Platinum and Premier members, so that's coming up at 1:30. We'll be back with the Pewter Report podcast next week, starting on Monday at 4 p.m. But who knows? Maybe there'll be some breaking news. Maybe the Bucs will hire an offensive coordinator and we'll do an emergency podcast. Kind of depends on what's going on. But that's why you need to stay tuned to Pewter Report and all of our social media and Pewter Report TV. So if you're not already doing so, please make sure you're following us on all of our social media on X, Facebook, and Instagram. We're at Pewter Report. And our YouTube channel is Pewter Report TV. Please like and subscribe. Leave a comment on this video as well, what you think about this Bucs offseason, how Todd Bowles can fix things, what Jason Light needs to do, however you feel. Maybe it's more conversation about Mike McDaniel. But that will do it for today's show. For Adam Slavon, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks everyone for watching. Have a fantastic weekend, and we'll see you Monday, unless you're a Pewter Insider, for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Oh. Thank you, Pewter Platinum and Premier members. See you Friday. See everyone else Monday. Oh.